think when we began OFI, and I say we because my co-founder is John Hammack, who was formerly president of Oxfam America, active in Women's World Banking, in many different NGOs. And so from the beginning we drew our ideas on a napkin over breakfast one morning, and there had been a goal to impact policy. I didn't have any confidence that I could. You know, I thought that he's talking a lot of things. But I think that the motivation is you can't just study poverty. There's something unethical about that. You have to try to be useful and to make your research useful. And so I think there's sort of timing and providence, and we're very grateful to it. But at the time that James and I were working on the methodology, the government of Mexico was working on developing their measure. And so together we had a very dynamic conversation, and they were the first government to launch a national MPI in December 2009. And then again, by chance, there was a meeting between one of my postdocs and somebody else, which got us into relationship with government of Colombia. And in Bhutan, I was there working on the Gross National Happiness Index. Happened to come at the time when they were trying to think about the functional form, and gave a lecture, and then they decided to use this functional form. So, you know, these openings occurred, but because we knew that that was a priority, we tried to take them, never knowing if it would work. But we're grateful that very much because of our colleagues, not because of us, they've taken some of these ideas into fascinating places for their countries or their particular projects of work. There's been quite a bit of interest in our work, and so it's been more, how do we as a very small team best serve what's becoming a bit of a movement, and what are the points of entry that we can do that others can't do, and how can they actually support each other as a peer network. So initially we decided to support technically different governments developing measures, but we were working with the geeks, and we are geeks, we're numbers people, we love numbers, we love, you know, formulas, equations. And it wasn't really getting very far in policy. And John Hammack pointed that out after a while. And he said, you need to actually meet the policy people in the country. We're like, how? But because, again, we were interested in trying, so we experimented a bit. And then we set up a network launched here in 2013 with Amartya Sen giving a talk, with President Santos from Colombia, one of the countries that really has been a leader in reducing poverty in all its forms and dimensions. And that network was a peer-peer network. And again, everything comes down to relationships. I was in India, in Ranchi, and called Gonzalo Hernandez Licona, who was the point person for the Mexico MPI, the head of CONAVAL, president of CONAVAL. And we were both complaining because we had so much work and so much interest, and we didn't have time to meet it. And so it was there that we said, well, why don't we try to get everybody to talk to each other?
So, the policymakers themselves meeting one another and discussing how they use this measure.
And so that we could create a space where people at the minister or vice minister level, vice president, head of state, could come off the record and talk about poverty. Talk about poverty because they were from the right and the left. They were from countries they didn't like each other. But this was the space to really be passionate about reducing poverty, and that was our focus. And so the network, we're very grateful, but it seems to be providing that space. And in addition to the network, which meets annually and has teleconferences and, you know, regional meetings and trips from one country to another. So in addition to that, we also do a technical summer school. Because we couldn't train anyone in human resources or the binding constraint right now, we also wrote a book, which hopefully is a textbook, but then it's too much gobbledygook, it's too technical for some of the people in statistics offices for whom English is their third language. So we're working on translations, and we're working on more of a manual for non-academic users.